Welcome to the Chef of X podcast.
Why is there a connection between, I would label them tribal, but why is there a connection between like tribal or geometric tattoos and wisdom? Why does that? Do you feel like there's a connection between those two? I feel like that's what they mean to me. Wisdom.
So...
And I say this because I'm about to, that's the beginning of my compliment section. I like your tattoos.
Okay.
And I consider you wise.
Okay.
And this is why I think this is the case, is because I think I'm making a knee-jerk kind of connection.
Okay.
But why? Why is that?
Why is it connected to wisdom?
Or is it even? Is it just me?
Through the research that I have done, and obviously you could see that I have
Your sleeve
quite a
up.
lot of sacred geometry, which you would call sacred geometry. I have the Flower of Life. I have Metricron's Cube. I have the Tree of Life. And these are, through the research that I have done, there are patterns that exist in nature.
Yeah.
And they're patterns that, according to a lot of astrology and like research that I have done, they're patterns that come through sound and waves, and that they stretch throughout the universe. Mm-hmm. So especially when I'm on a psychedelic and I'm having hallucinations, I see these patterns quite often.
Yeah.
And I think that they are connected to wisdom because our ancestors used them, and probably throughout every single indigenous community throughout the world, I feel like they use some sort of geometric pattern and movements to heal, to like you have muras, which are different hand patterns that you can use to heal, and that's ancient Japanese healing techniques, and that within itself, I feel that it's connected to wisdom, and I feel that sacred geometry and patterns are connected to wisdom because it represents life itself.
Yeah.
And these patterns are not, and there are patterns that are supposed to give off negative energy as well. So I think in paganism and in Wiccan cultures, you see some of that dark magic, and you see patterns that are potentially negative. I just got a new tattoo over here, and
I might have seen it.
yeah, and I'm probably not pronouncing his name right. I'm sorry, guys. English is not my first language.
What is your first language?
Spanish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's Metra something's cube. Metra. I have to look it up. I'll show you the word.
I don't. Yeah,
He's an archangel that supposedly he exists in like ancient Greek mythology and in the Bible, and he's the angel of like wisdom and peace, and this is the symbol that people would see when he would come down and talk to them. So and throughout his life, that's like his sign, and I've always thought, since I've been doing psychedelics and doing research on sacred geometry, that it's very connected to wisdom because it's about evolution through consciousness. And that's the main reason why now I've chosen to cover up my old tattoos, blacken them out, and then do sacred geometry on top of them.
Oh, that's what it is.
This is a blackout.
That is very dark.
It's a blackout of, I used to have a pinup model because I used to be into like the pinup world and the rockabilly world.
I don't know any of this.
No, so it's like
I'm uncultured.
modern day 1950s girls.
Oh, I have
like
heard of that
bangs,
pinup. Yeah. But you're still kind of in it, right?
Yeah.
You seem to be a little bit.
I mean, it's still my style. I like the vintage style, and I think that's. I don't like to say that I'm an old soul, but I've heard a lot of people tell me that I'm an old soul. So I connect my oldness to like I can never like modern day things. It's really hard for me. I have an attraction to like old stuff, and so I used to have a pinup, and now I've covered it up, and I have the Tree of Life, and I have the lotus pose. So when doing the lotus pose, and inside of the Tree of Life. And I feel like
wild.
I feel like that fits me more now because I want to believe that I've matured in consciousness, and these symbols represent that to me. So I definitely definitely believe that it's connected to wisdom.
Well, I spend a lot of time. I kind of identify as a math guy. That's why the f of x is in chef of x.
Right.
And
Have you heard of the Fibonacci sequence?
yes,
Yeah, so that's another pattern that I was potentially considering getting tatted on me, because it's the pattern that you see in flowers and onions and cabbages, in trees and volcanoes and structures and the pyramids of Giza, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, but I'm not really good at math, so I try to not so much equate it to math, because
I know
that numbers are fascinating, and that's what makes this sacred world of patterns and stuff, but I'm not really good at math.
Well, here's the thing. It's that everybody has been fucked over when it comes to math, because it's a discipline where you basically have to be you have to have an apprenticeship. So like if you have a one teacher with 30 students, that's not really how you learn math. It's more like
A one-on-one.
It's kind of more of a one-on-one, because you have to it takes a lot of time, and you have to play off of people's strengths, and the school system doesn't really do that well. So what can happen with a lot of people, I heard an analogy in boxing, which is that I think it's called southpaw boxing, but at some point people who were left-handed, I'm butchering this, but people who were either right-handed or left-handed, they were trained to box with the other hand, probably the left-handers, right? Because there's fewer of them. They were trained to be right-handed first, and then they learned how to box. But then a new style came out. Like for a long time, that's what it was. Like if you weren't the right hand, or whichever one was the correct hand, then they just trained you to be of the correct hand. But then a new style came out that favored the other hand. and that's kind of the attitude you have to have when training in math, is that you don't force people out of their natural rhythm. You have to figure out what their natural rhythm is, and then teach them a style that is aligned with the way they already are. And nobody does that in the school system. And it's not really, people do it, but like I felt like for me, my apprenticeship stuff came from other students.
Yeah.
So like I was in classes where everyone had apprentices, or they were all getting trained individually, and they would just like they would just pass on shit to me. And like a lot of it is based on inspiration, where if you pass on one golden nugget to someone, they will do all the work themselves, because they will be genuinely interested. But if you force them to do it, then they won't do it. So anyhow, what I was going to say is with this, I think with the geometry specifically, I feel, and this is something that only, the people in this demographic would know about, but like when you are good at it, you're in a flow state. It's actually relaxing. It's actually a state of mind that feels better than a normal state of mind. And I feel like geometry in particular is something where it can be so beautiful that it actually puts you in a Zen state.
Yeah.
And it's like it makes it so that if it becomes a positive experience for you, then even the parts that you don't like are worth it, because they're leading up to the positive thing. Like they're leading up to an insight that wasn't obvious to you before. And anyhow, I think geometry literally relaxes me, because I have to be so focused.
You're talking about like actually doing geometry work?
Actually doing really in particular writing proofs relaxes me. Because it's difficult, so you have to focus.
Yeah.
But when you focus, that's like what meditation is. And if you spend enough hours, I feel like spending enough hours focusing on something gives you a baby meditation experience, where maybe it's not the same thing exactly, but it's like there is some psychological benefit to just being locked into something for long enough that's outside of yourself, or maybe that has nothing to do with your personality. It's not ego based. It's just you're just doing the steps.
Right.
And it's hard.
Yeah, especially if it's geometry.
Yeah.
I feel the same way, but with political science. So sometimes when I'm studying different theories and different types of democracies and stuff like that, that also relaxes me. Or something that I gotten into recently was looking at revolutionary wars, like before the ones that we started learning in history books. So so that kind of stuff relaxes me. History relaxes me, but it also it also frightens me and it scares me, but just to know makes me feel that we have a chance, that society as a whole has a chance. And I'm really optimistic about that. So to me, it helps me to see how societies have persevered throughout history, politically and economically. And that's why I chose political science, because it was just something that I'm so passionate about. But I also find it sometimes overwhelming, because I have very particular political views and I can't really confine with people because everybody's really sensitive or something. But studying political science relaxes me, so I can see how math and geometry would do the same for you.
Well, one way that I think I've been able to observe that, you know, you are an old soul is your attitude toward sensitivity. I think that this might be something that we have in common, because I think right now there's a kind of a wave that basic preaching is that being insensitive, the only reason to be insensitive is to be an asshole. And I think there's another perspective that says, well, sometimes what you're seeing as insensitivity is actually, if you take a step back, it's actually something that makes sense in a larger context. And it's almost like a side effect medication type of thing, where that's not real. Like when you take a medication, the real effect and the side effect both happen. But we say this is the real one and this is the side effect because we don't like the side effect.
Right.
That's kind of what I mean. I think that sometimes insensitivity is something that happens along with other things. And I don't think there's any respect for that right now. I think anything that brings any level of discomfort is seen as the same as like a malicious attack. And I don't agree with that, because I've seen plenty of counterexamples, but it's sometimes it can be difficult
I think
in
that's
this age.
I think that's the side effect of the woke trend that occurred. I think people who became woke just made everything so touchy that now everything is being perceived as being insensitive. And I don't want to say I feel, because I feel like that's a woke thing, but it's apparent that so many things now have to be politically correct, or they have to have you have to, you know, beat around the bush with what you say, but in reality we're getting more censored than ever, and that shouldn't be the case. We should be able to talk about all sorts of things and not reprimand everybody who has a different view than you. And I've seen that quite a lot.
Yeah, and to me the irony of it is that that the colleges seem to be the center of the thinking. But when I was a kid, I always imagined like I was a real geek when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I wanted to go to college.
Yeah.
And I imagined that the colleges would be the places where you would meet people who had, I guess you could call them certain intellectual values. And that's one of the basic ones. It's like you should allow people who disagree with you to speak. Mm-hmm. And people have done away with that pretty enthusiastically.
I think it's this notion of having so much like free will and individuality, and like, oh, now because all these things that I felt, and all these hardships and all these traumas, and now we've somehow I don't know, I don't really know how to phrase this, but it's just become like all these traumas are now at the forefront, and now we can't say shit about them, although we need to deal with them and heal with the traumas. Now we can't even make any suggestions or speak our mind about how we could not stop us from speaking, but like, hey, how do we find a platform where we could all have a discussion about whatever it may be, and not go against one another just because we have different opinions and views. And I've noticed that since I've moved to Davis, that I had this notion that in university I was going to find intellectual people where we could have conversations that were open and flowing, because I was sure that I would find people with different views and political beliefs and stuff like that. But I've noticed that everybody just wants to stay with people that think the same as them, and it just creates so much divide to identify with one thing and be that one thing solely. I think it creates more barriers than actually a community.
Yeah. And I think that I'm much worse at interacting with people because of it. Because there's less practice. I have less practice. So it's like, one thing that happens a lot in my world is that people will say, people will act as if disagreeing with someone is the same thing as
not being on their side.
Well,
or I see this mentality out where it's like, if you're not with us, you're against us. You're
not with us, you're against us. And also, being with us means that you agree that this conversation shouldn't even happen. I guess that's it's kind of like it's almost the overstep to me is just that one person's position is there shouldn't be a conversation at all. And then the other person's position, well, you don't even get to hear their position. So it's kind of like, it's not even that you're picking two sides of a debate. It's that one person thinks there should be a debate and the other person doesn't even think there should be a debate. So yeah, it's very hard to have a discussion about that because it's so meta. It's like, let's have a discussion about why you should value discussion more.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, wait a minute. I'm already, there's no space for that.
Right.
So, yeah,
there's no Socratic method anymore for people to communicate. I mean, I think we're doing it, but I think that people are so hell-bent on sticking to their side that it just blinds them from, I mean, I think you're stronger and smarter if you could argue for both sides and agree with both sides and then disagree with both sides.
Right. You should always be able to see the good points on the other side. It's so annoying if somebody's like, there's nothing positive about this person. There's nothing positive that they've said.
Fuck this, fuck that.
The whole thing is not, it's just problematic. Do away with it, erase it, delete it. Yeah, that's anyhow. I don't remember where we were going with that. Okay, wait. Now let me get to the program that I was initially going to do, which is very philosophical, very open, but I think you'll enjoy it. What is a good life for Susie?
For me?
Yeah.
Whew, what is a good life? You mean how I define a good life, or what's a good life for my personal life?
Well, I guess how you would define it. If you could live an ideal life, what kind of stuff would be in it? And
okay,
that might be another better way of asking it.
I see myself. I mean, the life that I have now, I think it's a good life. I indulge in a balanced way in all the things that I like to do, and
that's beautiful. By the way, you indulge in a balanced way.
Yeah. I do. I most certainly do, because I work so hard that I reward myself with a lot of stuff, and not necessarily things, but experiences. And for me, a good life is being able to wake up and have gratitude in the morning and just be thankful to wake up, have a good breakfast, go to a job that I really like, continue to learn, engage in like physical activities, be able to have good nutrient food. A good life for me would optimally be, I would love to have my own farm and be able to live off my own produce and stuff like that, which I try to do when I go to the farmer's market. Also having a lot of love, talking to parents, having good friends, staying away from toxic people. And
where you messed up.
Yeah, and I'm learning how to have a good life. Before I loved being attached to toxic people and to drama, and I would be around people who were doing things that ultimately led me to a lot of trouble with the law, with my parents, financially. And I slowly, through a lot of hardships and adversity, I have learned what's the best life for me and how I could lead a good life. And I'm still learning, but I'm starting to realize that, okay, I don't really need a lot of money to have a good life. I want to have a good, I want to have good health. I want to be consciously mature about my emotions, and take day by day and not rush things and really just live in the moment. And that's what I'm learning. To me, that's a good life.
Yeah.
And yeah. What's a good life for you?
I think it's similar.
And communication. I love talking to people. So as long as I'm communicating with people, that's also fulfilling to me, and that's also a good life to me. And I love communicating with people, and yeah, so that's another another thing of my good life.
No, yeah, I agree with that one. Actually, for me, that's from a mental health perspective, it's like essential medicine to have one good conversation per week. But
yes.
But for like, I feel like my platform has always been performance based for a really long time, and it wasn't that healthy because I was really into academics and I was into sports at one point, and I guess those were the two main things. A little bit here and there with like clubs and whatnot, but I eventually had like a really big breakdown, and since then, I feel like I've recentered more toward mental health as the main piece of my good life equation. But a lot of my attitudes toward performance are still lingering there, and I'm grappling with them because I feel like I'm living in a way it doesn't really make a lot of sense yet. So one of the big ones is I still like masterpieces. I still, a part of me still feels like a part of my life that I want that it would be lower quality without is to work on really big projects and things that I feel like are deeply satisfying, long-term, kind of things that are legacy related.
Yeah.
But that attitude comes from a time when my work ethic was perfectly aligned with that. And now what I'm noticing is that I still feel that way, but I want it to be in areas where I don't have to compromise my mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I've noticed that I was gonna do a PhD in electrical engineering in like 2015. I was gonna apply to start in 2016, and I wasn't the best student in the world, but I was good enough to probably, like, if I would have made it through the master's program, I probably could have made it through the PhD program if I didn't quit the first 2 years. But now I'm like, well, I definitely don't want to do that. but there are things that I want now that for some reason I consider the equivalent of that. And, I actually, mutual friend, Reggie.
Reggie. Oh, I miss
So
Reggie.
I know, so we both know an EDM producer.
Yeah.
And he's one of the people in my world. I haven't spoken to him in months. But,
He's in Florida.
Yeah, that's why probably. But I remember the last time that we spoke, he briefly mentioned that he had this hunger, he had this desire, he had this fucking, this burning desire that he wanted to do something. And one of the things that was crazy to me is that I related to that, but I don't feel that way anymore. I still feel like, I want greatness, but I don't feel like I want to scratch for it. I want to, I feel more like I want a creative greatness where for example, I never gave a fuck about storytelling. Mm-hmm. But now I think it's a beautiful thing, you know? So, so I feel like it's not something that you have to grind. It's something that it's a taste thing where it's like, well, you try stuff and over time you figure out what to emphasize and what to cut out. And it's still a craft, but because of that, blah, 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 blah. A good life is mental health, but also masterpieces probably in the arts, rather than in the more strict disciplines. Although I love them, like I just don't feel like I feel like a certain freedom that I didn't feel before.
Yeah.
And even in my I do a little bit of math work still, but I figured out a way to do it so that it's not a grind. It's more of a, it's
Exponential kind of growth.
well, yeah, it's more of setting things up well. It's like I want to write something so that I can keep writing about the same thing for 20 years.
Right.
And the way I want to do it is just start from the very fundamentals, just the bare bones, 1 + 2 is 3. Just start from there. And then after some time, then add in some more complicated stuff on top of my own platform.
Right.
And to me,
building a good foundation.
yeah. And I see it more as like, well, this is a unique corner of the world that nobody wants to be in that I'm in. So it's like niche work instead of being in a rat race.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because of that, I really enjoy it. So anyhow, Good Life for me is it deals with a lot of creating, and then also a lot of the things you mentioned. I'm just at the beginning of my journey. For instance, food is the funniest, but like
yeah, I was gonna say
yeah, diet and exercise. Okay, so food. I only drink drinkable food. That's it. That's the big reveal.
You
Now,
only what?
the vast majority of the food that enters my body is a drink. It's this very gray, probably nasty thing that has macro and micronutrients that are very nice.
Okay, as long as it has the nutrients that your body needs.
If you looked at it on a graph, it would be like, the best food
What
ever.
is this? Send me the.
I don't want to do advertising for them.
Okay,
but I'll tell you.
I'll get the information later.
Yeah, I mean, in the future, who knows? Maybe I could have my own drinkable food company.
Yeah.
Especially if it's easy to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, you get the ingredients, you scoop them. Anyhow,
wow. I could never do that. I love using my mouth when I'm eating.
Yeah,
so
I wouldn't recommend it to anyone.
But I definitely am interested. So give me the info later.
You know what? Let me speak some truth about it. That is good. If you're interested in 2 things that I was interested in when I started, actually 3 things, then it is the best food. One of them is convenience. There's 0 cooking, 0 refrigeration.
I love cooking.
Yeah, depending on how you look at that. The second one is calories. You know exactly how many calories you're taking in because it's a ratio per cup of whatever the drink is, depending on how thick you're making it, right? Or you could think of it as per cup of the solution, and then you add water, which has nothing. So, so it's really easy to measure how much you've taken in each day. And then the last one is if you want to track any macronutrient too. Like I wanted to track protein because I was trying to gain weight at the time. So, which worked, by the way. This was like, I first started drinking fucking food probably 2017. And for a while, things were weird. I was getting weird looks. But if you looked at like my progress overall, I actually did gain a lot of weight over that time. So it delivered. So yeah, for people who are trying to track things super easily or just be super fucking lazy, then I would actually recommend it. Yeah. But most people, that's not their interest. Plus, you got to be willing to take a hit when it comes to flavor, when it comes to being a fucking weirdo, when it comes to, you know what I'm saying, sharing food with people.
When you first started, did it affect your emotions or your attitude, or do you feel that you had like a mental shift or?
Well, that's the beauty of it for me is at the time when I started, I was already in such a weird situation that it didn't even matter.
So you don't eat meat or?
No, now the truth is I eat everything, but I buy this drinkable food.
Okay.
And then I'll like, if I want to treat, like I had a burrito today. I'm actually in between cycles. They didn't deliver on time. Gotcha. So I'm like on edible food for a while until it fucking shows up. But yeah. So the drinkable food is the food thing. And then for the exercise, I was in the Arc for a while doing like deadlifts and squats, which really was the mass builder. Forget everything I was doing before that. That's all I should have been doing. And then it would have been 1 year transformation.
Yeah.
But but then I stopped. I left Davis at the end of fall. So I was like, okay, let me figure out what I'm going to do. And I was already kind of into it, but I'm getting more into like the body weight movement community.
Me too.
And it's really cool. It turns out it's really cool.
Yeah.
Like if you know how to use rings, parallettes, like weight vests, just small accessories here and there, you could really like
Change
do a
your
full
body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought it was weak stuff, like, oh, do
Yeah.
100 push-ups, what's that going to do for me versus a bench press, 200-pound bench press. But no, you don't keep doing the same push-ups. You do a more advanced version. And there's always going to be something that's like at your level where you can just barely do it. But anyhow, I would say sustainable workouts, which I'm doing. Having good macro and micronutrients, which doesn't necessarily mean drinkable food anymore, because I don't need to gain anymore. But just having decent nutrition, not eating fast food all the time. Expression. I may have, that's it. That's good. That's good enough.
I definitely agree. Yeah, yes, those are also big parts of my life too. Creating, cooking, health in general.
Yeah. Okay, next thing. Let's say you live a great life. What happens after you die? Or what in Susie's world, what happens?
Well, for a long time, I thought that when we died, we died. And that there was nothing. And
was this before psychedelics?
This was before psychedelics.
I always ask that because I know a lot of people say psychedelics helps with anxiety about death.
I don't think I've ever had anxiety about death. It was just I grew up in a semi-religious family, and I didn't like all the rules, and on top of me having rules at home, I just thought I was like, fuck Jesus and fuck heaven. I don't think that way anymore. And it was shortly after I did shrooms that I started to have faith. And I always said growing up, I told my mom, I came out to her when I was 10 that I didn't believe in God, and she got really pissed. And she put me through like, I had to do my first communion and a bunch of church stuff. And when I told her I didn't believe in God, she was like, well, what do you believe in? I'm like, I believe in hope. But yeah, shortly after I did shrooms for the first time, oh shit, I should have said that. Never mind. So after the first time I did shrooms, I began to feel faith, and I started believing in like miracles and energies that transcend like this dimension. And I started to go into like metaphysics and quantum physics, which I was really into for a while when I first did psychedelics. And so after that, my perspective on death changed, and the way that what I think after death, for at least for me, it's two things. I feel that we are reincarnated into the earth, and I feel like we transcend into space. Our consciousness, I believe that transcends into space, into the universe, and then our material physical vessel gets recycled back into the earth, and it goes in our plants and our fruits. Obviously our DNA gets recycled, so my DNA will live through my children and my children's children. So I don't think that we actually die. I think that our vessel that we're in has to decay, because that's the nature of all stuff in nature, and we're animals, so we have to decay. So this decays, but our consciousness, I think that it surpasses this reality. So I think it lives on. I just don't, I want to assume it's in space or in the universe, or, in different dimensions. But, so I don't really think we ever die.
Yeah.
Because when I was little, I would have these dreams, like these crazy dreams about China, and I had never been to China, and I had only seen pictures, and I grew up in El Salvador, so we didn't get a lot of information of China, but in my dreams we were speaking Chinese. I had a Chinese family. I would do like a bunch of traditional Chinese things, and it wasn't until I came to the United States that I was like, oh shit, I had dreams about all of this. Like, and I would tell my mom, like, I think maybe I was Asian or Chinese in my past life.
That is odd. So these were multiple dreams?
Yeah. And it would be the same people in my dreams, like reoccurring dreams in different scenarios. Like in my dreams, I had this house, and it was quite similar to the house that I grew up in El Salvador. And a lot of the customs with Latin American countries and I think Asian cultures is that we have this like huge respect for elders and stuff and our ancestors, and we're really close to our families. So those things were really apparent in my dreams, but I was a completely different. I look completely different in my dreams, and I was speaking a language that I would hear it in my dreams, but I knew that it was Spanish, but when I spoke it, it was Chinese. So so I don't think we ever really die. We just recycle.
We definitely do recycle when it comes to the
Is it okay
physical.
if I check my phone real quick?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Actually, I when you were talking about dreams, I had a recurring dream, but it was disgusting. Can I tell you? I mean, I hope it doesn't ruin anything, but like, oh my God. So I was in a dream. I was with this girl, right? And we were walking around a campus, and we walked to a certain area, and this is in the dream. We look out a window, and there's a bunch of people having sex outside, right? So we go outside, but when we get out there, no one's, it's just normal people. It was like it was a trick on our minds.
Oh.
So then we walk around, and we see Mike Tyson.
The guy with the tattoo on his face? Okay.
Yeah, and by the way, I've been dialed into his world a little bit, so that explains why he was in the dream. But I watched his podcast a bunch of times. Anyhow, I'm in this. This is like a weird dream that I had twice, but the ending was different. So the first time we asked Mike Tyson, "Hey, we want to have sex outside. Where's like a good spot?" Right? And he's like, "Oh, this bush." Right?
Oh my goodness.
And then I'm like, "That's stupid. No." So I somehow I turn my back or something. And I turn around, and Mike Tyson is fucking this girl behind the bush, God. Right? So he's like, "Yeah, you want to join in?" And the first time, the dream, I said no.
So I'm assuming the second time you said yes.
The second time I'm having the dream, and at some point in the dream, I know I've had this dream before. So maybe I was lucid dreaming it, but it was gross. Long story short, I said yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyhow, that's the only dream I ever had twice. And that was recent. That was like within the last month.
You made the choice in your dream?
Oh, it was disgusting. It was horrible. It was like cream pie.
Yeah.
It was like,
oh my God.
I'm like, dude, Mike Tyson just fucking.
You just did, what's it called? The Eiffel Tower? Or
I don't know that. I don't know the terms.
Because it's like two guys and then the girl.
Oh, no, it wasn't that. It was sloppy seconds.
Okay. Ugh. Gross.
A Mike Tyson of all people.
Yeah, I would not want to have a threesome with him.
No. Heavyweight champion of the world. No, thanks. No. Okay. Anyhow, yeah. So I think that we're still in a time where this is considered speculation, but I suspect that consciousness. I suspect that consciousness cannot leave the mind, but nobody knows. So right now I'm in the position that you were in when you were younger, which is that a little bit more of my background is like I had exposure to like Catholicism, Christianity, and Islam when I was a kid because I had a mom who's my mother's side of the family is Catholic, and they had a lot of children. So she had 11 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
And like some of them are Muslim, some of them are Catholic, right? So we would hang out at different cousins' houses, and there'd be different religions. And for me, I always had anxiety about death because it wasn't even about death. For me, it was that people were older than me. once I realized that adults were children, it really tore me apart because I thought like, wait a minute. So I wasn't around at that time. They're like, no. And I was like, well, where was I? Well, you didn't really exist.
Oh my goodness.
So I was like, oh shit, that to me was more of an immediate concern than death because it had already happened. So essentially I had been dead for most of recorded history. It was the way that I processed it, and the life was the abnormal part. So hence
that's
me,
deep.
yeah. So that was like my fundamentals of philosophy. A lot of people, like I would tell people I like philosophy, and they're like, "Oh, so you like Descartes?" And I'd be like, "No, I like thinking about the human condition.
Yeah.
I like doing what Descartes did, you know."
Thinking.
And yeah, I like thinking. I didn't know anyone else even cared about it. So when I learned about philosophy eventually in middle school or whatever, I was like, "Oh, there's other people who were like worried about this shit." You know what I mean? I thought I was the only one in my house that was worried. So people would just laugh like, of course you weren't alive. Who cares, you know? So anyhow, because of that and because of my exposure to multiple religions, I think my whole atheist understanding really began like around the 10th grade, although I had suspicions here and there. For me, a lot of my positions come from the world of science, where it's like that's the kind of scaffolding for the position. For instance, when I say I don't think consciousness can leave the mind, but this isn't proven yet. What I'm really speaking about is, well, our conscious experiences, is it possible that they could be computed by our brain? And this, to me, seems more of like a detailed science question. So I think that I think that I'm one of the few people in this camp where I wouldn't want people to have my position. Similar to drinkable food. I wouldn't want people to have my position. I would want them to have it if they got there in the same way. But I could see it as really, really destructive if they just tried to jump there. Like if they tried to follow me and say, well, this guy thinks this, so therefore I want to think it. I think, like, if you worry about neuroscience, then yeah, you should think about whether or not the mind can compute, the brain can compute the mind. But if you're not worried about that,
Wait, so
is it useful? Is it really useful for us? Because if I'm correct, then it doesn't matter what we really think, So wouldn't it be better, especially if there's no dogma attached to it, wouldn't it be better to consider living forever than to be settled at like, I think we're going to die? And I think for most people, it would be better to consider it. And I think the problem I have isn't even with specific models of what happens. It's with just dogmas. And we can see dogmas in areas that have nothing to do with death. Like you can have a view. I always give people the box view, right? There's either gold in this box or there's not gold in this box. So if you open it, then that's just looking at evidence. But if you have a belief about it already and you're stuck to it and you say, there's definitely not gold in that box, well, then you'll never really know if there's gold in the box. So I realized that my view is that I do think it is game over at death. But I don't think people should think that.
yeah.
I don't think most people. I only think you should think that if it's easier to think about the details of neuroscience than it is to think about just the beauty of life. You should be focused on your life, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you'll know, I guess, when you die.
I know, exactly. Everyone will know anyway, so who cares?
Yeah. I mean, you'll figure it out when your time comes. I personally would not want to live forever.
Yeah.
I feel like
even
just
as
like
a consciousness in the universe, or you mean like as you are now?
As I am now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to live forever. No, I wouldn't want to live forever. The reason I don't really think about death is because I know it's going to happen, so why not just enjoy the life that I have with the opportunities and circumstances that I've been privileged with. And but I do like to think that consciousness is separate from the mind and it exists somewhere in the soul. And I know that's another thing that maybe it exists or doesn't exist, but I don't think soul has a shape or a form or just like energy, it doesn't have a shape or a form. Like the wind doesn't have a shape or a form. So that's where I stand with consciousness at death.
Okay, I'm in arguably I just got out of a toxic relationship, so I wanted to, and you actually, you gave me some specific food for thought, I think, before about this, but toxicity in relationships. So how would you, how about this? I'll make a statement and then you say what you think about the statement. But my thing is, I think that it's difficult to know if you're in a toxic relationship, because I think if you're in it, then on some level it's normalized.
I disagree with that.
You disagree? Okay.
I think that if you're in a toxic relationship, it means that you yourself are toxic. I think so.
Actually, I think I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that.
I think at some level, it's not even about toxicity. I think that's maybe like the umbrella of what it falls into, because people don't want to call it trauma, because trauma is a much more deep word. But I think it's really just dealing with trauma. I was in 2 very toxic relationships, and the moment that it clicked in me that shit, this is really toxic, and it's pulling me into that toxicity and into that perpetual trauma. And when I realized that I didn't want it anymore, that I wanted to heal and I wanted something better, I was able to pull myself out of those 2 relationships that were really toxic for me. And ever since then, I've only been in 4 relationships, and my 2 last relationships were really great because I didn't want to repeat those same actions and that would cause toxicity and trauma to further grow in the relationship. But I feel that at some point I myself was very, very toxic. I could tell people I might not be able to fight, but I could beat you up with my words.
Yeah. That is bad.
I could demoralize somebody really quickly, and I in retrospect, I know that was really wrong, and I've acknowledged like my wrongdoing in my past relationships. And once I accepted and confronted the fact that I myself was toxic, I felt a shift in the people that I was hanging out with and dating. And the moment that I spot like red flags, I'd be like, hey, this is not going to work out for me. And I move on. But I think it's easy to be in toxic relationships, like you said, because it feels normal. Just with domestic violence cases, women become normalized to being abused, or men, in whichever case it happens. And I think that's fear, the fear of being alone, or the fear of not finding somebody else, or the fear of not being of comfortability. Like we don't want to break out of our comfortable cycles, and that perpetuates toxic relationships. And I think the most prominent thing about that is fear itself.
Yeah. One thing that I try to do is spend some time try to get used to being alone.
Yeah.
Because my impulse is that if something goes wrong in one area, to immediately jump, or in one relationship to immediately jump into another, because it's, I don't know, just fill in the whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I also, I'm lucky because I actually like being alone too. I really enjoy it.
I enjoy being alone.
I always feel like
I'm really independent. So like,
yeah.
And I feel like you're independent too. And that brings some comfortability in being alone. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can probably relate to this. Sometimes when you're independent and then you get involved with someone who is maybe less
Codependent?
independent or codependent or whatever. Yeah, maybe even, right? Then they start penalizing you
Yeah.
for doing the things
that
that
made you
you're
independent.
Yeah. Like, wait, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I've been doing this. I've been doing that.
You knew. You knew what you got yourself into. How dare you throw that in my face now?
Yeah. So it's very interesting to think about it because for me, I remember I was doing this. I had this idea back when I was in community college, which is now this shows you that I thought of it in community college. No way I would have thought of this at Davis. But I was thinking of calling it the Dry Pussy Podcast. And the idea was this. Here was the premise.
I would have not been on that show.
Maybe. You might have liked what it actually is
Okay.
dope. So the idea was for it to be a non-sexual conversation about things that are
Sexual
or sex related.
I wanted to do a show like that. Yeah.
You would be way better at it than me. I had no business being anywhere near it. But someone actually wanted to do it with me, right? There was someone who went on to do great things, but she decided, yeah, I'll do this. And one of the things that, she was bringing up was basically that like, everybody's got their own kind of energy, but there's a big sign of where you're at in the game is to know like what role each person in your life can play and how you can help them, right? And one frame of mind that I have when I feel like I'm being really, really, I'm in my toxic bag, so to speak, is that I try to think, okay, I won't be completely alone, but what I'll do is I'll try to practice being a good friend. I actually think I'm a pretty bad friend by default because I'm outrageously reclusive, outrageously alone, So I could forget birthdays. I might forget, I might make an appointment with someone and then not put it in the calendar and just completely fucking miss it and not even apologize for it. So until they call me out, right? But it's not out of disrespect or hate or whatever. I'm not trying to harm anyone. It's just that I'm genuinely airheaded in a lot of areas related to friendships. So I think, well, let me try to be the best friend that I could be for as long as possible rather than pursuing relationships. And usually that's like just enough to keep me on edge, but I still feel that underlying rumble of like, I have fear that I'm going to fuck people up. Like, I don't feel like I'm that toxic, but I feel like I could fuck people up.
Do you think you're worthy?
Oh, 100%.
Okay. So then why would you fear that?
Because sometimes I'm like, I don't really know what my effect is on someone until it already happens. So I don't want to, mess something up and then really scar them. And then that's how I learn. Like I have this story about this girl I dated like 2012, long time ago. And I was, this was back when I was in my like academic phase, right? Super productive. So I said, hey, I'm doing some homework. I would like you to leave me alone for the weekend, right? She came to my door crying the next day. And I was like, what? What's the problem? And she was like, oh, you don't want to hang out with me. And I was like, so what? I told you I'm going to be working on something. Why can't you understand that? And my reaction to that was anger. And then later on, like I retold the story to somebody, and they were like, "I mean, is that how you feel about it now?" And I was like, "Yeah," And and
they were still mad about it.
Yeah, no, they weren't. I still felt like I was justified in the response, whereas the present version of me would be more lenient. Like, okay, if somebody is actually in tears at your door, then maybe it means more to them than you thought it did. Maybe you gauged it wrong.
Right, absolutely.
Instead of just immediately saying, what the fuck, you broke the contract.
Yeah.
You should try to be understanding, why is it that this person feels this way about this event, even if it was a small deal to you. Why would it be a big deal to anyone else? And I've noticed that pattern repeats. Like, the amount of contact I have with people is just very minimal. Sometimes I'll call somebody once a week and I'll be like, that's it, once a week. That's what you get. You know, you got
Someone
an hour
that you're
from me.
dating?
Yeah. That's your hour, you know?
Wow. What about texting? Do you text?
I mean, what I'm saying is, these are at my worst. This is what I'm like. Yes, I'll text somebody. Yes, I'll, you know,
Do you think
whatever.
those are toxic traits?
Yeah, because I have abandonment in my past. So
Okay.
so I didn't grow up with my parents. One of my parents I have like no history of. The other one, just normal abandonment.
Wow.
So so for me, like, a part of me is always going to be that kid who's like, yo, where the fuck are my parents?
Yeah.
And I grew up with that. So for me, it's normal for people to just not be around. And a part of the story is like, well, maybe they're doing something that is worth their time to do. So when I interact with people, if I'm doing something that's worth my time, then I'm like, oh, they'll understand. 'Cause, like, I fucking understood as a kid. But the reality is, they have no idea. They're just normal people. You know what I mean? They're just trying to say hello or whatever. And they're not, I'm so task driven that sometimes it can be hard for me to wrap my head around the idea that someone just wants to be around or just wants to relax without any goal in mind.
Right.
So, and in that sense, I do still feel like, let me not fuck up anybody else in the process of my healing. Let me just try to figure out exactly what the errors are, and then
And what your
over
triggers
time,
are, or
and what the triggers are. I feel like I'm good with the triggers.
That's good.
I'm usually very calm. I'm not the person to fight with my words or my hands. I see it like, if somebody if I'm fighting with someone and they really try to hurt me and I try to hurt them back, then that's a failure of my character. Because when they try to hurt me, I should view it as they're hurt and that's why they're doing it. They don't actually want to hurt me. They're just, it's difficult for them to do anything other than that in that moment.
yeah.
So usually when it comes to certain things, I'm on point. But when it comes to other things, abandonment related shit, then it's like, I'm like the worst fucking, I'm some animal out there grunting. I have no connection to the rest of humanity.
Oh, no.
I don't really know how people operate. So, but anyhow, you think if things are toxic, you would know, or it's possible. People should know.
I mean, but it's harder to see if you yourself are toxic. So if you yourself are toxic, either you might not see the things that are affecting the relationship, again, because it becomes normalized. But if you're healing and you continue to see toxic people, I think it starts to become more apparent, and you start to realize, hey, I don't want the cycle of things, and I don't want to recycle the same characters in the people that you meet. And
let me ask you this: do you get in a lot of fights in your relationship?
no, I mean, I used to. Yeah, I used to a lot. But in my past relationship, we hardly ever fought. I mean, we fought for, like, because I couldn't make up my mind on where to go eat, or
No, that's toxic to me.
I mean, that was the most silly thing, but it would be like over in 2 seconds, you know, and or we would certain things like putting the seat down when he would go use the restroom. That was,
because it's irritating.
I would have to put the seat down or whatever. I mean, just little things like that we would fight about, but not major things that related to our communication, our physical attraction, the way that we verbalize things. Everything was pretty like set in order, but I also feel like that was my strongest relationship because we had also known each other for so long prior to that, and this person and I were fuck buddies for so long.
Yeah.
And and then we reconnected after like 3 years of not talking to each other, and then we ended up like dating and then seeing each other for almost 2 years. And it was really solid because we both really like similar things, although we were really different people. He's not academic based. He doesn't really care about the political world. He does a little bit, but not to the way that I would want an actual partner to be. But it was good enough to the point where we could still have conversations. And he was so curious about political science and philosophy and history. So I found that really attractive. And so we connected so well on so many levels. And I think that one of the main reasons that we work so well was because we both like physical things. We like going out. We like the same kind of sport activities. We would go snowboarding, surfing, we would skateboard.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And we would go rock climbing. And then we had really solid communication. He came from a family where he was really close to his parents, and I was really close to my parents, so he understood when I had to be with my family, and he understood that I had a curfew, and he understood several things that were really important to me. And
By the way, a lot of those things I have no understanding. Like the curfew, don't understand.
I used to hate it when I was little, but then I just realized it was my mom just really caring about me. And so that was I think that was like my best relationship, just because everything was out in the open, and we would talk a lot and do a lot of stuff. And I feel like the biggest thing was that we had amazing sex. It was just like fuck all the time. It was amazing, and we would always find new things to do and new places, and like we kept everything.
Mike Tyson.
I definitely have had sex in a bush, so it's quite fun actually.
You gotta get cream pie. According to my dream, that's the place to get cream pie, is by Mike Tyson in the bush. Oh my
goodness, scary. Not by Mike Tyson, but but yeah. So, but my prior relationships to that, they were really toxic, and I would argue consistently because my first boyfriend, we moved in together when I was 18, and we were really young. He was 21, I was 18. He loved to party and go out. He didn't respect his mother. He'd call her a bitch, you know. He hated her, but yet he lived with her, and she helped him through a lot of shit. So I was like, I don't understand why I hate her so much.
He's so mad, yeah.
But I guess I never really realized that, you know, as a child, she had done a lot of stuff to him, and he had a lot of resentment towards her. And I understood that too. I had a lot of resentment towards my mom for a really long time for not letting me be like an individual. And but my first relationship was super toxic. He didn't let me go out with my girlfriends. He always thought that I was cheating on him, to the point where I eventually started cheating on him.
That is pretty toxic. The accusations.
Yeah, the accusations.
Fuck.
I was like, motherfucker, I don't even have a fucking passcode on my phone. I leave everything out in the open. Like if I wanted to be with somebody else, I would be with somebody else. Right. So, but then that created a cycle where every time a guy would accuse me of cheating, I'd go and cheat, because I'd be like, well, if you're going to accuse me, I might as well do it.
Might as well, because I'm taking the downside already.
Yeah, you're already
treated as,
Yeah, and because I was really promiscuous when I was younger, and I still kind of am a little bit. And when I moved out, I wanted to get tattoos. I wanted to like be this rockabilly girl. I cut my bangs. I dyed my hair. I wanted to be like, I finally became the rebel that I couldn't be in my household. I got piercings. I started getting tattoos. And
wait, let me jump in. Do you go to Death and Glory tattoo in Davis?
No? I don't like traditional tattoos.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, is that what you mean by the rocker? Okay.
So, I mean, that's
some of them. I can show you a picture. Maybe it'll.
That's like old school tattooing. That's a tattoo style. So, but the figures that are represented in those tattoo styles come from that rockabilly pinup world.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I mean. The figures in the tattoos. Yeah.
Very, very toxic two first relationships, to the point that at the end of my first relationship, we got into a fight. He gave me a black eye. I gave him a black eye. And it was really, really abusive. And that's where I was like, okay, I'm done. And after I called it quits, he was still pursuing me. I moved out. I got my own studio in Hollywood. He was still pursuing me. And this was like maybe like only 9 months after we had lived together. I moved out. I was working a really good job. And well, at the time I thought it was a good job. And so I moved out on my own, and I was like, fuck it. I wanted to like be on my own and explore things. And he kept contacting me. He ended up like, maybe we were together for like 2 years. And then after we broke up, it was still another like 9 months of us him continuing to pursue me, to the point that he thought that by proposing to me, he can make things better. Mm-hmm. And he, after I had told him I need a break, like I can't do this. It got even worse. He caught me cheating on him in the act, and it was really bad. And I know that created even more problematic things in his life. And it was something that if I could go back and do things differently, I would. But that was probably that spawned a lot of more toxicity in my next relationship that followed, because as soon as I broke up with him, as soon as I stopped seeing him, 2 months later, I was in another relationship already with somebody else.
Well, that's the question. What's the right amount of time, right? It just depends on each person, right?
Yeah, but because I already had been ready a year to break up with this other dude, and then I was like, man, I want to be with somebody else. And 2 months later, I meet this other guy, a musician who had multiple traumas in his life, and then I ended up moving in with him as well. So I kind of like ended perpetrating those two relationships, kind of like collided, and the same kind of toxicity that I had in the first one fused into the second one. And I was with him for 2 years, and then he had a mental breakdown that I couldn't understand, and I didn't really know about mental health at the time. This was I think this was in 2012. And 2013, 2012, and I wasn't really in the mental health state, or like I didn't really know what that was or how to deal with it. But so when he went through his breakdown, I was like, I can't be here for you. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Demons? What are you talking about? Demons?
That's the right move. Get the fuck out of there.
So again, he wouldn't let me break up with him. I ended up cheating on him.
That to me, that is the most toxic thing right there. Wouldn't let me break up with them.
Dude, both of these guys would not let me break up with them. They were consistently trying to stay with me when I was like, I would tell them to their face, I don't want to be with you. And they'd be like, but why? Let's make it work. I'll be a better man. You know, and they would do something. They would do something that would buy some time, but I would be like, fuck, I don't want to be with this person. Yeah. And my course of action was like, well, it looks like when I cheat, they definitely get they finally hear the bell, like, okay, this girl really doesn't want to be with me. And I'm not proud of what I did, but at the time it was the only solutions that I felt that I could have in order to run away from those relationships. And so my first two relationships, a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. I had great experiences. I got to travel. I got to be in a ska band. I got to get my first tattoos. I discovered a bunch of stuff about myself that I didn't know. But like I said earlier, when we started talking, is that through adversity and through difficulty, I was able to realize that I don't want to continue to live that life and meet people who will drag me down and who will drag me down physically, emotionally, mentally. So after that relationship, I was single for 2 years, where I was just hooking up with people for a while and not really dating, not really trying to find out about people. And things started to change a lot for me, and I started meeting different types of people who were completely different than these two types of men that I had been seeing. And then that's when I got into a relationship with a woman, and we were together for 2 years. And that was my first great relationship. And then after that, I was with a male. And then that was my second great relationship. And I didn't cheat on either of them. So I'm really proud of that.
Good for you.
Yeah. And those two did not have the jealousy aspect and my first boyfriend, he was very, very like, you tell me where you are, where you're going, who you're with, very clingy, not clingy, but like very, I don't know what's the word, I can't think about it, but very possessive, very possessive. So, I think those are traits of toxicity where you're possessive, where you're selfish, where you're narcissistic, when you're egotistic, with jealousy, and those things could be disguised in a relationship too. And that's what I feel like a lot of people who are in toxic relationships don't see is that jealousy could be disguised very, very subtly. It could just be like, text me or show me your phone, and those are basic things, and but I'm really glad that as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize what I really want from a partner, and I'm attracted to both. I don't know, sexes, genders. I don't know.
Don't say the wrong thing. Don't say the wrong thing. What's funny about that, by the way, is you're in the LGBT community, and they're probably the ones to attack you for saying the wrong thing.
I'm not. I don't.
You don't identify as.
I don't identify as bisexual.
If you look at it literally for what it means.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, when it comes to my sexuality, I'm really flowy. I've never been the one to say I'm bisexual.
Yeah.
I just say I like humans. I used to be a sapiosexual for a while, where I was really attracted to people who I could have a really good conversation with.
Yeah.
And then after a while, that kind of lost its charm because not a lot of people want to have conversations. So I was just like, okay, well, I was like, well, let's fuck. But
that's the way out of being. I think it's sapiosexual. Sapio, maybe. I don't know.
Sapio?
I don't know which one. I don't know what I'm talking about. I shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah, well, that's when you're like attracted to intelligence.
Yeah, I'm just saying the pronunciation.
Yeah. Again, English is not my first language, so.
You're from the LA area. I'm from Pasadena. You know this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I am LA. I'm in LA in 1999.
Do you say you're from LA if you grew up in another country? When did you leave? When did you come to the United States?
I migrated to the U.S. in 1999. I mean,
age-wise.
I was 9 years old.
Okay.
No, I was 8 going to be 9. And for me, those are like the most primitive years. So I say that I grew up in El Salvador, but I also really identify with Los Angeles because it was my home for so long.
Yeah.
I didn't move to Davis until 2017. So I spent 16 years of my life in Los Angeles, and I got to know the city really well. So I say that I'm from Los Angeles, but I do tell people that I'm also from El Salvador when they ask.
Yeah.
So I identify with both, and I'm really attached to both. So I'm really attached to the Latin heritage of my life, but I'm also grateful to have been in the U.S. For the latter part of my life. So I like to say I'm an LA girl.
Yeah.
A Latina from LA.
Yeah. And it sounds like you spent some adult years in LA too.
Yeah.
Like people like me are from Pasadena, but I wasn't an adult. So I don't know anything about LA.
Oh my goodness.
Because I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
wait, how old are you again?
I'm 20. I'm going to be 26 very soon.
Okay. Oh, you're not much. I'm going to be 28 this year. So you're not that much.
You're an old woman to me.
Wow. Well, I wouldn't say you're old, but.
Speaking of age.
Yeah.
Do you think about kids? Is this something that is in your mind at this time? Because they say men and women, it's different how they think. I have an extreme position on kids, which is that I hope I never have kids. Actually, I'm willing to surgically not have kids if it comes to it.
You and my roommate would probably get along because she feels the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you consider children?
I didn't. For a really long time, I didn't believe in marriage. I didn't believe in that institution, and I didn't. My parents, they have such a murky relationship that their marriage has been through so much shit, and I've witnessed a lot of it. but ultimately at the end of the day, they're kind of happy. So, but for a really long time, no, I didn't think about children. I told my mom, I'm not going to have children. I don't want children. But as I'm getting older and psychedelics have also kicked in, just the thought of creating something with my body that will, if I could leave anything behind, if my work, if with the things that I create, if the masterpiece that maybe one day I'll get to create either in social justice or whatever, or law, wherever I
Social
go next.
justice, huh?
Well,
Real social justice, not being woke, but actually
not being woke, but actually
creating
being
just society.
Yeah, and I'm a political science major. I want to go to law school, and but I'm also finding that I don't want to grind so hard for something that I'm passionate about. But as I'm getting older, if I don't leave a legacy behind, I want to create something with my body that I could maybe give some life to and give some experience to. And I've had pets, and I don't feel like that fulfills that kind of desire. So I definitely don't want to have kids right now. But that's definitely not in my near future at all. But if I find the right partner, I would definitely like to create a little human.
Sperm donor or IVF?
I like the nuclear family system, and I would want to have it with somebody who could help me raise a kid, because I don't want a kid to just grow up with one parent. And I know that works, but the half of my life, I only had my mom. And then the second half of my life, my dad came in, and I feel that led to a lot of the trauma that I perpetuated into my relationships. I also had abandonment issues with men.
Perhaps a female partner to raise the child?
I don't see myself being with a female. Sexually I do all the time, but not to actually have a family with. I don't think that I can't see myself with a woman forever, but I could see myself with a man forever. But I don't know. I mean, I've been in love with a woman, I've been in love with a man, so I don't know.
If you were with a man and he slept with another man, would you say he cheated on you?
Yeah. If his fucking dick went in another hole of any kind.
He was a bottom.
Oh, fuck, no. I would not want to be with a man who was into other men.
Why are you being judgmental?
Because that's how I feel.
No, that's fair. That's fair. The reason why I asked that is because I realized that if I was with a woman and she slept with another woman, I would not consider that cheating. Even if she was in a relationship with another woman.
I would still consider that cheating. Like if I'm with a partner, and that partner is male, and I sleep with another person, that partner happens to be a woman, and I didn't tell them, and I secretly did it.
If it's secret, I guess that's a big part of it.
If it's secret, and
what if it's not secret?
If it's not secret and it's consensual, if it's consensual,
meaning you consent to it.
If I consent to it, if my partner consents to it, then I think it's fine. Mm-hmm. I definitely think it's fine. But to me, if I'm with a man, I want that man to be completely heterosexual. Yeah. I don't want him to have any gay tendencies other than me eating his ass, which I'm totally cool with. But if you want me to...
Do people consider that gay? A woman eating a guy's ass?
I don't consider it gay, but if you want me to penetrate you, then...
With the strap on? You have a strap on right now?
Fuck, no. No.
You have a strap on in this house?
No, I have other things, but not
Use
a
a knife.
On. Oh, hell.
Oof, no. That's toxic.
No, that's
Use
hella
one of those
toxic.
bottles.
I mean, I've seen it. I know it's possible. But no, I know I know that might sound close-minded or judgmental, but if a man wanted to be with another man and he wanted to also be with me, I would not be with that man.
And I said, why are you being judgmental? I don't actually think that. I don't actually think it is judgmental. I think that your preferences when it comes to your own sexuality are just that. Yeah. But I think it is judgmental if you're dealing with something that has nothing to do with your own sexuality. Like, hey, I'm not going to sell him a ticket to this play because he's a bottom.
Oh, no.
Then it's like, okay, that's too far. Yeah. But if you're saying, no, I don't like this, then that's perfectly fair game.
It's like I would also not be with a trans men. Or a trans woman for that matter. That's another preference that I have. And and it's not because it's just my sexuality. I don't know. I don't know if it's sexuality or the attraction just doesn't call to me, but I don't know. I haven't engaged with anybody who's trans, so I don't know yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if I, under certain circumstances, sure.
I think for me is I'm really attracted to people who are authentic, and when I think about someone who isn't authentic fully, or hasn't like fully accepted their whole true being, to me that's like really unsexy. And that could be if a man is a child, that is so unsexy to me. Or if a guy doesn't have confidence, or if a woman doesn't have confidence, that's really not sexy to me. That's not attractive. So I like that authenticity that comes with confidence, intellect, creativity, passion, and stuff like that. So again, I don't know until I meet the actual person and when we communicate. And for me, it's definitely like a physical thing, an aesthetics thing, but also like a mental thing. Yeah. But back to the children thing. Yeah, I do want children.
Yeah, I'm considering getting a vasectomy soon.
Ouch! I heard they hurt.
They might. Hopefully it doesn't.
Well, you got it's preference is your choice, and if there's already so many children in the world that need parenting, or I mean, that's another thing that I might consider, is that if I can't create something or a thing, then maybe I will adopt. But I ultimately, I want to create something with my body.
Well, if I accidentally create a kid, then maybe you can adopt it. And then we both win.
Well, see, I do want a big family, so we'll see.
Okay, well, on that note, it is time for the most important question in the universe.
The most important question in the universe.
Roll or bounce?
Bounce.
That's right. Gracias. I'm going to take the headphones off.
Chef set.
Hey, strawberry, blueberry. One berry, two berry. That's a snack, blackberry. Hey, do I really want the stem or the cherry? Bucket naked doing mathematics. Hey, dynamic, I don't mind static. Hey, can't deny it, I might die tonight. Hey, every rainbow's just white light. Keep my toppings on topper. Helicopter, draw the whole lot. Cartographer, think about thoughts. Philosopher, check the bars with a barometer. Not a day without chefing, that's negligence. Don't trust what I say, check the evidence. It all depends on the mold you were shaped in. What you make from the leaves that you rake in. Either you get it or you don't. Either it's burnt bread or it's toast. Either a wavelength or a note. Either a joke or a real quote. Either use it or lose your vote. Strawberry, blueberry. One berry, two berry. That's a snack, blackberry. Hey, do I really want the stem or the cherry? Not the most musical, more Dr. Seussical. All my work's useless, I keep my dick usable. I'm a nuisance, the proof's in the juices. Finish all your trig and your sig fig Newtons. She smoked that estrogen and progesterone. Threw it in the vape, took it to the dome. Fuck it, I might hit the testosterone. Chef's cut, dopamine with some melatonin. I can't tame it if it's too tame. I can't name it, it's a new name. Left, right when the life came. Every night play the dice game. Draw the line through the right planes. Is it mean if I don't mean it? What's a fucking mean to a deviant? And not to diss you, but you stop chefing. I don't miss you, I have no tissue. Strawberry, blueberry. One berry, two berry. That's a snack, blackberry. Hey, I really want the stem or the cherry? I keep it one more than 1,000. I see these sheep charged up, keep it rounded. Somebody show these where the pound is. I think the kitchen's getting crowded. Same place, different state. Same shit the chefs love, the sheep take. Keep my beats in a briefcase. Never cheap with the beefsteak. Nothing free in that sweepstake. I think they're locked into the optics. I'm like the opposite, I'm like their complement. I'd rather say a lot with a little. So the violin got a fiddle. If you don't experiment, you don't walk. You wanna talk? Are you really about the chalk? Then please shut the fuck up. Enough is enough. Sheep ass arguments, get your tongue cut. Strawberry, blueberry. One berry, two berry. That's a snack, blackberry. Hey, do I really want the stem or the cherry?